Once upon a time there was a young man named Noor, known in his village for helping people and his strength. One day, after finishing work, he heard a female voice calling for help from inside the mountain. He rushed there and was shocked to see a giant monster with a cow's head. 15 years ago, Noor lived with his sick mother, taking care of her and handling all the housework. After his mother passed away, Noor was left alone. Her only wish was for him to live freely, so he continued his daily routine and learned to rely on himself. One day, Noor found an adventurer's guidebook on his farm that his father used to read to him. Remembering his mother's words, he decided to follow his dream and become an adventurer. The next day, he visited his parents' grave and told them about his decision to leave home. As he traveled through the forest, he faced the hardships of the road until he finally reached the Northwest Mud Kingdom. After entering the main gate, Noor was amazed by everything around him, even by the people, as if he had never seen humans before. He wandered around until he reached the Adventurers Guild. He was soon rejected since he was still too young. When Noor said he was an orphan, the supervisor decided to help him and told him he must first enroll in the Royal Training School to learn useful skills like sword art or magic. Excited, Noor joined the school and chose to become a swordsman. He trained with wooden swords until one of his classmates used fire magic, leaving him stunned. Months later, Noor was still unable to use any magic. His teacher, Sig, gave up on him, saying the only thing Noor had mastered was dodging attacks. He advised Noor to find another path. Feeling frustrated, Noor left and joined a warrior training school, but the supervisor, Dandog, told him he was physically inferior and would endanger his life. He then tried the hunter school, but Mian, the supervisor, rejected him for lacking weapon sense. Even when he tried to become a spy, he failed. Noor kept trying to learn something useful, but every school turned him away for having no talent, either in magic or strength. He ended up seen as a useless loser. He returned to the guild, where the guildmaster was shocked that Noor had spent 3 months training without gaining a single skill. He refused to register him as an adventurer. Noor went home broken but didn't give up. He made a wooden sword and trained alone, focusing on parrying, the only skill he had learned. After a year, he could parry 10 swords at once. After 3 years, he could parry 100, though he still had no other skills. He kept training. After 10 years, Noor could block thousands of strikes at once, but still lacked new skills. He decided to return to the Mud Kingdom and try again. At the guild, the new supervisor was confused by his useless abilities. When she couldn't register him, the former supervisor appeared and recognized him after 15 years. Hearing Noor's story, the boss said he could only be accepted as an F-rank adventurer, with the restriction of doing only simple city jobs. Noor accepted happily and received his F-rank license, overjoyed to finally be an adventurer. He began taking small tasks around the city, proud of his work and continuing to train in his free time. One day, he entered a mountain and saw a cow-headed monster holding a hostage. Many adventurers were already there, but the monster slaughtered them all until only Noor and the hostage remained. Determined to protect her, Noor threw rocks to distract the monster using hit-and-run tactics. When it charged at him, he blocked its blows until his sword began to crack. The monster turned toward the girl, and Noor rushed forward, blocking its axe. His sword shattered, but he kept fighting with everything he had until the monster fell. The girl freed herself and thanked him for saving her. Noor, feeling sorry for those who died, told her he wasn't anyone important and left quietly, realizing he still had a long way to go. After a while, the girl named Linneberg knelt in front of the bodies of the adventurers until her guard, Ines, joined her and apologized for not accompanying her from the beginning. She told her that there is no sense in having a guard in the tests of the heirs to the throne. Then the guard, Dakin, told her that they must return to the castle immediately as Mr. Rain would like to meet her. After that, Rain sat thinking about why there was such a monster in the depths of the cave and suspected that there was an invisible hand behind the incident. Dakin told him that they found a ring in the hand of a merchant who was present at the crime scene, and after the mage expert Oaken examined it, it turned out to be a pure magical stone and the origin of the ring from the Druids' magical empire. Rain then realized that the empire intended to force them into a war by provoking them in this way, as they wished to loot the kingdom's riches, namely the famous ruins of the Cave of the Lost. Then he could not believe that they had lost track of his sister's savior, Princess Linneberg, after he managed to defeat the monster with a simple sword. The next day, The guild president was surprised to see that Noor was still alive, and Noor found that yesterday's incident had been widely publicized throughout the kingdom, and the president worried when he noticed that he had disappeared the moment the monster appeared and thought that he had died. Noor told him that he noticed some suspicious people following him after the incident, but he had to go home immediately due to fatigue. Then he realized that the president did not know that he caused the death of the monster yesterday, and the president told him that he would not have a chance in front of him even though he was an A-rank adventurer in the past. Noor played dumb to avoid detection, and the boss told him that a mysterious man had defeated him in one fell swoop. The boss then asked him if he didn't want to get a proper job instead of his current pathetic situation. He then tells him that he can earn 30% more than his current salary if he decides to take a decent job for himself. He is surprised to see Lin standing behind him after finally finding him and telling him that she needed to meet him. When she tells him about her skills, he realizes that she is actually a spy and asks him to speak privately. As they walk together, Lin used her invisibility and soundproofing abilities to go unnoticed. After they were alone, she told him that she wanted to thank him properly for saving her life, and found that she overpraised him when she described him as having saved the lives of many people that day. Then she decided to give him a valuable gift for his bravery, and told him that her father asked to meet him to thank him. But he was satisfied with words of praise and her feeling of gratitude towards him. So she told him that she has a high social status in the kingdom and must honor those to whom she owes her life. But soon she was so infuriated by his exaggerated conviction that he didn't want anything in return for saving her, that she started crying like a baby and told him that she would not leave until he accepted her gratitude. Remembering his youth when he was rejected by an adventurer in his school and insisted on not leaving until he convinced the supervisor to train him, he had no choice but to agree to meet her father. So she used her abilities, and together they made their way to the palace. When they arrived, Noor was impressed by how luxurious her house was, and on their way inside, he told her his name, and when he asked her for her name, she realized that she had forgotten to introduce herself properly, so she told him her name. Then they met Ines, and upon learning that Noor was the one who saved Lin yesterday, she felt ashamed of herself and had to take them to where Rain is. Noor noticed that Ines was treating him with great caution. Then they met Gilbert on their way, who surprised Noor by pointing his spear at him, which made him feel unsafe inside the house. And upon learning that he was Lin's guest, he smiled sarcastically and insisted that he was not a clear person. But Ines whispered to him to accompany them to the hall to ensure everyone's safety. Meanwhile, Rain was in a meeting with his father, Clays, who was furious to learn that Emperor Derrida was behind the incident that almost killed his daughter and thus violated the peace treaty between them. Then Noor and the others entered the hall, and Rain noticed that she was wearing a hermit's cloak, which meant that she had gone out without permission. She told him that she had to find her savior by any means, so Clays approached them, and Noor told him that he was not an aristocrat and did not know the etiquette related to it so as not to be misunderstood. Clays told him that appearance and social status are not important, then shook his hand and expressed his gratitude for saving his daughter's life. Noor thought that his mission was over and he would go home now, but Clays told him that he would not let him leave without honoring him and that he was ready to give him land or money if he wished. But he was surprised to find that he did not care about these things, so he offered to give him half the treasures of the cave that the kingdom owns, as the kingdom of Clay is famous for having the oldest cave in the world, and Noor said that he does not need any expensive gift in the hope that he can get out of here and return home. But he was surprised when Clays brought his sword from behind the throne and offered him to take it rather than remain a mere decoration. And when Noor held it, he was surprised by its great weight, which indicates that it is not just an ordinary sword, and when he knew that it is worthless like him, he accepted to take it. Then Clays asked him to swing it once, and when he did so, they were amazed at his physical strength to swing such a sword with one hand. He decided to ask him to help Lin become stronger so that she could protect herself, but he told him that he had nothing to teach her and that she should be the one to make such a decision. After that, he left the palace, constantly staring at his new sword and feeling that it was a valuable sword, contrary to what Clays had told him, and when he noticed the size of the blade, he decided to use it later to clean the sewers in the streets. Then he found Ines standing behind him in the courtyard and asked him to give her some time to talk and apologized to him for her inappropriate way of dealing with him, as the family guards must protect all members from any danger. Then introduced herself to him as the deputy commander of the Clays' warrior corps and nicknamed the Holy Shield. Then she told him that from now on she would help him as much as she could because he had taken over her job of saving Lin for her, and Noor felt that everyone was making a big deal out of it. Then she warned him not to to behave the same way in the future, as she did not accept his behavior in talking to King Clays in front of them, and when he found that she was serious about it, he promised her that he would not repeat his behavior again, and after she left, he found Gilbert waiting for him on the other side and was surprised when he asked him to join him for a while. Noor is forced to go along with Gilbert despite his strong desire to go home, and finds that he takes him to a training ground where the rest of the guards are dueling in a mock battle, and remembers that he used to train alone in the past when he attended different training schools and didn't have a teammate. He felt that training like this with Gilbert was a golden opportunity for a budding adventurer like him, so he chose to duel him with a wooden sword, while everyone was amazed that he dared to face someone like Gilbert face to face. When the fight began, Gilbert attacked him and Noor continued to dodge him until he realized that he was deliberately not using his full potential against him because he was not a strong opponent for him, so he asked for a timeout and told him not to go so easy on him. Then Gilbert unleashed himself and began to attack him at a faster pace than before, and Noor noticed that he deliberately left his back exposed when dodging him, as if he was trying to draw him out, while Gilbert was furious at not being able to hit him with at least one blow. While Noor felt that Gilbert was not taking their fight seriously, Gilbert tried to deceive him by changing the direction of his strike in the air, but still failed to hit him with his spear, so Noor asked him to increase the speed of his attacks even more, and seeing Gilbert's reaction, he concluded that he was doing his best, and perhaps he was the one who had become stronger after the hard training he had undergone over the years. In a flash, Noor was surprised by Gilbert's use of the dragon drive at full speed, while Gilbert was shocked that he couldn't hit him despite giving it his all, and when Noor realized how strong he was, he admitted defeat and left the place amidst everyone's shock. On the other side, Gilbert sat in a dazed state and remembered his youth when he discovered his talent in using the spear and became famous in the royal capital, and had no difficulty in crushing his opponents throughout his life until he began to get bored and look for strong opponents himself. His teacher suggested he return home and work as a guard. He decided to return to the royal capital and devoted his time to hunting demons and defeating newcomers to the Legion, until he realized that he was surrounded by weaklings everywhere and grew tired of fights and battles. While he was lying in the forest after being given an honorary title, Sig joined him and marveled at the sight of his sullenness. Even though he had been honored, Gilbert told him that there was no point in being honored as long as there was no excitement, and he was still surrounded by useless losers, and wished that there were a few of them as strong and powerful as Sig. When asked if he was tired of training novice adventurers, he told him that he was doing it to protect the kingdom, that it was impossible to win a war alone, and that he believed that one day someone would emerge who would be able to surpass him. Then Gilbert came back to reality and thought about Noor's eccentric personality, as he was indifferent to the king's most generous rewards and his strength in taking down a wild beast on his own. Even though he seemed useless and not a strong opponent, yet he could not touch it with his spear. Although Noor admitted to losing to him, Gilbert felt humiliated and defeated for the first time in his life, and after his departure, he was surprised by the large cracks he made on the ground, as if he had been in a fight against Son Goku, and then he felt excited and looked forward to his next confrontation with Noor. On the other hand, Noor felt that he almost died if he did not use his meager physical abilities to avoid the last attack, and realized that he was still weak and needed to become stronger, and the next day he was practicing his usual work with his new sword and was surprised by his ability to completely clean the drainage and remove the mud in difficult places. He felt satisfied that his job of cleaning the drainage was going well thanks to the sword, but he was frustrated that he would have to stop working in the cave for a while because of this accident, and sat thinking about how he would end up with nothing to do in the city since he was only allowed to do F-rank adventurer's work. When he thought about using the sword to start his own business, he found that the other equipment would be inherently expensive, so he decided to use the sword itself as a grill to cook food, but the problem lay in the source of the fire, as the flame he could make was very small. Lin joined him, and upon seeing her, he remembered Inez's threat and saluted her respectfully, then marveled that she was able to find his whereabouts after asking the guildmaster about him, even though he hadn't told him where he was going. Then remembered that she had the skill to find anyone. She then shocked him by asking him to accept her to work for him as a subordinate to help him with his daily tasks. She promised not to cause him trouble, but he did not hesitate to refuse her categorically, so she tried to convince him that he could rely on her despite her young age. He told her that he had nothing to teach her. She tried to entice him that her family would pay him a teacher's salary, but to no avail. He told her that he could only help her if she needed him to do something on his own. Frustrated but determined to prove to him that she was trustworthy, she used both ice and fire magic at the same time, saying that this was one of the highest level magic skills she could use. She then used her blade to split a large tree in half and continued to show off her skills far beyond his own to convince him to accept her as his disciple. However, he persisted in his refusal and came to think of her as just obsessed with the idea of becoming a disciple of someone like him, and realized that he was just pathetic compared to her. He told her that, after everything she had done, he was now 100% aware that he couldn't teach her anything, but she kept begging him to accept her as his assistant, so he decided to show her what he could do to get her to get out of his face and convince her that he was just scum, and that his defeat of the monster that day was purely coincidental. After that, Lin turned back after realizing that the story of the little boy with no talent was not a fiction made up by the teachers to motivate them to practice hard, and that Noor was the real author of the story. However, she was amazed that a 12-year-old boy was able to enroll in the 6 training schools and complete 3 months of training in each of them despite his lack of talent, and never gave up. And what impressed her even more was that he could light a flame larger than that of Oaken, the most skilled magician in the world, yet he considered his flame to be as small and useless as his 6 other abilities that were almost at the same level. Lin found it incomparable to Noor's unparalleled power and looked like a clown as she demonstrated her skills in front of him to impress him, and admired his ability to live his entire life on his own without the need for help, and vowed to obtain a power similar to his so that she could rule the kingdom with her brother. In the evening, she goes to him and tells him that she will follow him wherever he goes until she becomes as strong as him, and he recognizes her as his disciple and learns how he was able to achieve such physical and mental strength. The next day, Rain sat thinking about why his father decided to give his sword to someone like Noor. The history of this sword goes back to Clay's time as an adventurer before taking over the kingdom, when he was deep in a cave with the 6 lords and found the sword inside the cave. After that, the sword became famous as the Unbreakable Blade due to its unparalleled hardness, and became more valuable than any other sword, and he realized that Clays depends on Noor too much to give up his famous sword to him so easily, and this sword may be a secret weapon that Noor will need. One day, in the meantime, Lin went to breakfast with Noor, who was annoyed by her calling him master, as he was too lowly for anyone to look up to, and as they ate, he told her that he intended to go to the guild, and thought that when she saw the level of tasks he was performing, she would realize how simple he was and might give up the idea of becoming his apprentice. After they went to the guild, the boss was surprised that she was accompanying him, but he ignored their question. Noor told him that he was looking for a mission for 2, so he suggested an ogre hunting mission since Lin is a B-rated adventurer, but Noor was horrified by the idea. Noor felt that he was taking advantage of Lin's high rank, so he asked her if she was okay with it, and she replied that she would do anything he asked her to do, and he felt sorry for himself. Noor gathered his courage and decided to accept the mission. In his excitement, he headed out without knowing the location of the mission. When he returned, the boss told them that they would be heading to the monster forest, and they would have to cut off the ears of every creature they hunted, or they would not be able to get the reward. After that, they headed towards the Kingdom Gate and started their journey towards the monster forest. After arriving, Noor noticed that the trees were very dense, so he was curious to ask Lin about the type of ogres, and she replied that they usually prey on animals, eat the fruits of trees, and attack humans, and they must eliminate them before their numbers increase and cause a food crisis. But at the same time, they do not have to exterminate them to maintain the ecological balance. After that, they continued to check all the areas to find the location of the ogres, but they realized that the rumors of an exaggerated decrease in their number were true, until Lin sensed the presence of a monster, but a little farther away. They started walking towards the monster until Lin was surprised to sense a monster right in front of them, but it disappeared within seconds, so they continued walking again until they were shocked to see one of the ogres being eaten, and then Lin used her ability to detect the presence of all the creatures around them and found a giant ogre standing right in front of them. Noor was shocked to see the size of the ogre and thought that this was the average size of ogres, as it was the first time he had ever seen an ogre. Then the ogre uprooted a tree with one hand and let out a loud scream like the wind, so Noor decided to gather his courage and prepare to face it, and Lin did the same to fight beside him. The ogre used the tree as a weapon after he split it in half and rushed to attack them, but Noor continued to block him, and with the continuous attacks, he realized that the ogre was trying to surround him. Then Then Lin used her magical abilities to attack him, but they were surprised by his unexpected speed. Then the ogre continued to use trees as weapons and threw them at them with all his strength, while Noor continued to block him. And then Lin noticed that the ogre had an energy stone in the center of his forehead and thought that they should try to remove it so that they could defeat him. Suddenly, the ogre throws several trees at them at once. Lin uses wind magic to block them all and causes a violent storm. They soon find that the ogre is able to heal himself thanks to the energy stone, and Noor feels that they are in trouble because Lin, with her abilities, is unable to do much damage to him. Then he had an idea and asked her to aim the wind magic at his back and then put the sword behind him, and when she used her power, Noor used the feather ability to quickly dodge the ogre's attacks and then jumped towards him and succeeded in destroying the stone with his sword and uprooting it. Then the ogre grabbed its head and moaned in pain, while Lin managed to grab the stone, so he asked her to finish it so that it would not suffer more, and she managed to burn it using fire magic. And after they made sure of its death, Noor vowed that he would refrain from killing ogres for the time being and devote his time to training more. After that, the ogre stone was delivered to Rain, and when he learned about it, he suspected that the magical empire was responsible for this incident, while his followers suggested that he might have turned the demon from the Mithra theocracy, and was amazed that Noor and Lin were able to eliminate it alone, and wondered that the ogre was able to stay in the forest for a few days according to Lin's words without being noticed even by the secret legion due to its stealth. In the meantime, the guild leader admired Noor's ability to overcome the ogre despite his meager abilities, telling him that he succeeded in completing the mission thanks to Lin's presence, and thought that he should celebrate his first hunting mission as he considers it a huge progress in his career as an adventurer. When the leader asked them for proof of the ogre's hunting, they realized that they left without bringing his right ear as requested, and that Lin burned it to ashes and they will not be able to return and bring it back. Rain was reading some letters from the residents of the kingdom about some strange events they had witnessed recently, and when he connected this to what happened in the monster forest, he concluded that enemies had infiltrated the country and ordered all users of the search and detect skills to spread around the kingdom to find anyone suspicious and summon the 6 masters. Noor and Lin were having lunch together, and Noor was happy to be eating with the money from his first hunt. He sat down to think about how long it would take for this to go on, and he realized that the magic empire was behind the recent events in the kingdom. Then he sat thinking about how long Lin would continue to accompany him wherever he went, and he was soon relieved when she told him that she was going home today. Then they were interrupted by the arrival of Rain, who suddenly asked them to go to the city of the mountainous area tomorrow morning. Noor accepted his request and decided to return home to pack his belongings. Rain told him that he would give him a carriage and a guard for the trip, and that he would cover all his travel expenses, as he was the only person he could count on at the moment. The next day they started their journey towards the mountainous region, and Noor was as excited as a child, as it was the first time in his life that he was riding in a carriage, and he kept looking out the window and noticed Lin sitting absent-mindedly and then apologized to him for her brother's burden of asking him to carry out the mission. Lin hoped that nothing strange would happen during their time in the city, and Ines told her that this was the reason why she was accompanying them, to protect her from any danger. She then remembered that Rain had ordered her to flee with Lin and Noor to the Mithra theocracy upon hearing the news of the destruction of the royal capital, as he had a hunch that the capital would be plunged into unprecedented danger. Ines apologized to Noor for getting him involved, which made him wonder why she was taking such a simple trip so seriously. Then he noticed that she looked tired and told him that she had something on her mind at the moment, and that ensuring his safety is one of her responsibilities. He told her that he was not thinking about it and was confident in his ability to protect himself or escape if he had to. She told him that she had armor and they would not have to run away under any circumstances. Noor was amazed when he saw her armor, which is a magical ability, and he decided to put his trust in her as she is so strong that she could be compared to the power of Gilbert. And when he admired her talent, he remembered Ines as a child when she first discovered that there was a mysterious power inside her. She was surprised when her friend at the orphanage tried to touch her magical power and ended up with a cut on her finger. The teachers at the orphanage called her and asked her to show them her power. Oaken said she had a rare gift from heaven that could wipe out entire countries and encouraged her to learn to use her power. She began to train under Dandog, the master of armor, who taught her to transform her power into a shield that protects her from all kinds of attacks. Over time, she became afraid of causing harm to anyone, so she began to set boundaries between herself and others until she ended up completely alone. When she met Noor for the first first time and he told her his name, she remembered what Dandalk had said about him, as he wished to be with them in the most difficult circumstances when their army lacked strong soldiers, and she became curious about him to the point that she began to feel envious of someone she had never met before, and this feeling increased after meeting him. Noor noticed that there was a road in the middle of the wheat fields, and then found that there was something moving in the middle of the fields that they couldn't see from a distance. Lin used her cloaking ability and a large dragon-shaped monster with wings appeared in front of them. Meanwhile, Rain and Clays received a report that several monsters had appeared around the capital and that they were short of soldiers to handle them. So Rain ordered the capital to be cleared of civilians and summoned the Secret Legion and the Hunter Legion. Meanwhile, all the knights, soldiers, and even the 6 lords were fighting to defend their territories all over the capital, and chaos began to reign while Rain thought that his sister and the others were safe from the war. On the other side, a mysterious boy was controlling a monster walking through the wheat fields. He was surprised when his invisibility barrier was destroyed, and before he could control the monster, it attacked him. Noor rushed towards them and saved the boy from the monster's next blow. Ines realized that the boy Noor was defending was the one who was controlling the monster while they were hiding, and Lin remembered what Ryan had told her about demons, half-humans with special powers who had the ability to control monsters and almost destroyed the Mithra theocracy in the past, causing the hunters to collect as many demons as they could until they thought they were extinct, but it was discovered that their descendants were still alive. Lin realized that the boy was trying to lead the monster to the royal capital, but he lost control after she discovered their presence, and Ines was furious with Noor for helping someone like him, calling him a fool and deciding not to help him. On the other hand, Noor was thinking that he had to hold on until Ines came to help him, until he was surprised when the monster breathed the deadly poison towards him and he failed to stop it and began to bleed from all over his body until he became helpless. When Lin wanted to go to help him, Ines stopped her and warned her that another wave of toxic fog would soon be caused by the monster and she couldn't allow her to be in danger under any circumstances, so she thought it would buy her time to run away. As the monster spread its poisonous gas around, Ines used her power to protect Lin and told her that she needed to stay alive as the existence of the kingdom was at stake. Lin tried to use wind magic to purify the air of the poison, but to her surprise, it caused birds to die and fall from the sky. While Ines was protecting Lin, she felt sorry for having to leave Noor on the brink of death without helping him, as she is just a soldier and her duty is to protect her masters until death. Then she noticed one of the monster's hooves flying towards her armor, and then the fog began to clear and she was shocked to find that Noor was still standing in front of him despite his miserable condition. And she realized then why Dandalk recognized his strength. The boy named Rollo remembered his miserable life in prison, where he was humiliated and beaten severely with his classmates as they were the descendants of the cursed for their ability to control monsters and were imprisoned after a demon incited the monsters to fight wars and shed. Over time, Rollo noticed that he had the ability to read the thoughts of the people around him, and when they discovered his new ability, the violence and hatred towards him increased, and despite his ability, he was unable to defend himself. One day, he was assigned to take a group of monsters to a country in order to help them, and the guard tempted him that if he succeeded in the mission, he would stop beating him for no reason and let him fill his stomach with whatever food he wanted, and if he refused to do the mission, he would live his worst days in prison. Rollo was forced to accept the mission, especially since he was unable to read his thoughts due to wearing a magical device around his head, and decided to trust the guard's words and began his journey with the monsters until he encountered Noor and the rest on his way and realized that he had failed in his mission as soon as he lost control of the monster and felt that he was about to die now, and was relieved that he had not harmed anyone throughout his life and hoped to live a decent and peaceful life if he was destined to be resurrected again. Then he was surprised to see Noor appear in front of him to defend him and wondered why he was protecting him. After being exposed to the monster's poisonous gas, they began to bleed, but Rollo soon found that he stopped bleeding thanks to Noor's healing ability. Noor continued to block the monster's blows until he collapsed after he lost his strength. Meanwhile, Noor remembered when he was a young boy collecting food ingredients from the forests and almost died after eating a very poisonous plant. The next day he searched in one of his books and found that the plant is called Dragon's Damar, the same plant that his mother told him not to eat, and despite his extreme fatigue from the poison, he decided to continue training and practicing his daily tasks, but the bleeding returned returned again and he was unable to move. After some time, his body recovered and he felt hungry, so he went to collect some herbs and plants, and then he was surprised by a snake biting him from his axe. And although it is one of the most poisonous species, he was surprised that he was not affected by his bite, so he decided to take it and eat it for dinner and found it tastes good. The next day, he went to the forest again and caught another snake and made it bite him in his hand. And then he felt that the poison spread slowly in his body compared to yesterday, and he realized that he had gained immunity to poisons, and he began to spend his time developing his sense of taste for poisonous foods. And after many experiments, he did not gain any skill. After that, the monster continued to attack him, but he regained his strength and blocked all of his attacks. While Rollo was amazed at his strength, then the monster prepared to release more poison, and Noor felt that he was betting his life on this attack. Before the monster could spew its poison, Noor attacked it and forced it to hold the poison in its mouth until its head exploded and succeeded in finally defeating it. Then he headed towards Rollo to check on him, and when he asked him why he was around, he was shocked to learn that he had brought the monster here because he had promised someone to take him to the city, and because of his unparalleled foolishness. Noor thought that he wanted to bring the beast to the city to be eaten, and that he had ruined a great feast and caused the failure of Rollo's mission, and felt bad that he had caused the death of the beast and made the boy's efforts in vain. Rollo was surprised when Rollo bent down in front of him and apologized to him for ruining it and promised him that he would pay the cost of the monster, but he would need some time to collect the money, so he told him that he didn't need money and everything was fine. Noor was curious to ask him how he could bring a fierce beast like him to this place, and did not understand anything when he told him his ability to control monsters, and thought it was a unique skill and was excited to learn that he had this ability since birth. Rollo hesitated before telling him that he was a descendant of demons, and that all his kind had the same ability, and because Noor, as an F-class adventurer, was ignorant of such things, he could not realize that he was evil, and instead wished he had the same skill to make animals help him with field work and herb gathering. Rollo was surprised to find that he didn't hold a grudge against him and didn't care that he was a demon, and was surprised when Noor advised him not to care what people said and that it wouldn't make his ability any less useful, and when he remembered how he had been humiliated and insulted because of his ability, he continued to cry, not realizing that his ability could benefit people. Noor marveled at his self-loathing even though he had a tremendous ability unlike him, and thought that he didn't realize its value at the moment, but he would be great one day, then patted his head and told him that everyone would need him more than him. Lin and Eyes interrupted them, and when Lin wanted to examine and treat him, he told her that he was immune to the poison and his bleeding had already stopped. They were both amazed at his immense physical strength to withstand such a deadly poison, and concluded that he might have used the skill of Master Sane, the Master of Salvation. Then he asked her to take care of Rollo and treat him first. When she took a look at him, she immediately recognized him as a descendant of demons because of his pale skin and purple hair, and she was surprised that Noor wanted to take him with them in the carriage. When they asked him who instigated him to take the monster to the city, he told them that he did not know, but he promised whoever asked him to carry out the task, and Ines realized from his body language and fear that he was a slave in one of the countries and was forced to do the task. He told her that he was blindfolded until he arrived here and did not even know the destination of the city in which he lived, so Noor decided to take him to the nearest city they came across on their way, and Lin thought about it until she realized that he was just a homeless and weak boy even though he was from an evil race, but she decided to trust him and asked Inez to let them take him in the carriage. She tells them that Mithra's theocracy forbids demons from entering the city because it is a sacred city and they may be attacked as enemies. Then a strange voice interrupts their thoughts and they find behind them a blindfolded person standing at attention. Then it turned out that the suspicious person called Zadu came to retrieve Rollo after his mission failed, and they were all surprised by his super speed in rushing and attacking them, but Noor was able to stop them, and although he does not know Rollo's name, he wants to get him back because people like him are worth a lot of money. Zadu continues to attack him and tells him that he needs to bring him back to his client alive and let him dispose of him himself. Zadu tries to use his speed to overtake him and get to Rollo, but that doesn't work against Noor, who can increase his movement speed in return. Zadu decided to target him personally instead of Rollo, and when he tried to target his head with his daggers, Noor blocked him with such force that he retreated several meters from the force of the blow, and Zadu marveled at how strong he was despite having a small sword and that he broke one of his daggers. Noor felt that he was in trouble because all he could do was avoid his attacks using only his intuition, and it was only a matter of time before he ran out of strength at this rate. On the other hand, Inez used her shield to protect Lin after realizing that they were in a fight with an S-rank adventurer known as the Dead Zadu. Then I remembered when they were investigating a case about him, and found that even the teachers refused to get involved with someone like him because of the power he possessed from a young age. Oken told them that he earned the title of Dragon Conqueror at the age of 13 after mastering the art of dwarf alchemy shortly afterward. Sig continued that he ended up becoming a wanted criminal for using his skills and strength for evil, and his name became associated with many bloodshed crimes, although the guild could not remove his name from the list of adventurers due to his great contributions. Inez realized that he does not distinguish between good and evil and always prioritizes money, which is why he accepts any mission he is given, regardless of its purpose, so much so that he wiped out an entire country in one mission and caused the extermination of its population and the royal family without sparing anyone. After some time, Zadu ran out of daggers after Noor shattered them while blocking his attacks, and he kept marveling at this weirdo with a weird sword that could shatter his daggers made of orichalcum and dragon's fangs. He decides to use his cross-shaped sword and throws it upwards until Noor finds that it splits into several small swords that attack at once. Noor blocks one of the blades and allows the rest to penetrate his body in order to protect Rollo. Inez felt that they will die at this rate with thousands of blades, and they definitely need her help, but she can't abandon her duty to protect Lin. But in the end, she got carried away with her emotions and asked Lin to let her go and help them, and then used her shield to protect them from the blades that are raining down on them. Then she started attacking him with shields, but he easily dodged them, so she decided to focus on defense only and asked Noor to take care of him, so he thought to use the remaining claws of the monster to attack him and use the physical enhancement ability to strengthen his arm, and at the right time he threw the claws towards the blades and succeeded in destroying a huge amount of them. Zadu appears out of nowhere and tries to hit Inez with his blade at very close range, but Noor intercepts him before the blade reaches her face. Shocked at his ability to block such a close attack and shatter his unbreakable daggers, Zadu decides to retreat for now after losing several of his blades. Before leaving, he tells them that a celebration is about to take place in the royal capital without giving details, and tells Rollo to consider himself lucky for giving up the idea of retrieving him. Then he tried one last strike before disappearing. When he realized it was impossible to hit Noor with any attack, he disappeared into the smoke while Inez and Lin pondered what he meant about the celebration. As usual, Noor took his words literally and told them not to worry about it as it sounded good, then suggested they turn back. Rollo was horrified to learn that they were from the capital and told them that they couldn't go back there as the strongest monster would be sent there, strong enough to wipe out the city, but Inez refused to go back to the capital and was surprised that Lin knew about her agreement with Rain. Inez agrees to return to the capital on the condition that Lin does not leave her behind. Rollo decides to accompany them in the hope that he will be able to tell them something. On their way, Lin vows to capture Zadu and save her kingdom from disaster before it's too late. Meanwhile, Rain was surveying the damage caused by the monsters attacking the capital and the Six Masters' resistance to them, and he realized that the enemy is waiting for the right time to attack with the largest wave of monsters, as they cannot stop them or withstand them, and he kept guessing the direction from which they will attack him. Then he noticed that something suspicious is hovering in the sky, and when he used his ability to break the invisibility, he was shocked to see a huge black dragon flying directly above him. As Noor and his companions approach the capital, they are shocked to see the dragon hovering directly over the kingdom, and Lin realizes that it is not just a dragon, but is known as the Invincible Dragon of Disaster. On the other side, the dragon begins to block the sunlight from the royal capital, and Rain is shocked to learn that he was supposed to be in hibernation, but someone woke him up, and he can't understand why someone would resort to such a destructive means for a minor dispute. Soon, the dragon began to terrorize everyone by destroying a number of buildings with its wings alone, so Rain ordered that all civilians be displaced from the capital and use force if necessary. While the Six Masters are still fighting on all fronts and cannot meet in one place, on the other hand, Gilbert asked Clays to hide in a safe place. Clays told him that he still had something to do and ordered the warriors to make sure that the capital is cleared of civilians and protect them. Lin was frustrated knowing that her father would choose to sacrifice himself to save his people, in which case he would surely die and she would not be able to help him. Noor suggested that they use the wind blast ability that they did against the giant ogre so that he can reach the capital at full speed, and told her that he can still save her family as he owes everyone a lot. And Lin felt that she was drowning in her pessimism in vain. Meanwhile, Clays remembered when he was negotiating the peace treaty with Derrida, and Derrida told him that his kingdom's cave of waste would be wasted with scum like them while he could use its resources to rule the world. But Clays refused to give him the cave of waste at any cost. Then he realized that he had underestimated Derrida and did not expect him to attack him with full force in order to gain control of the cave. He decided to take the fault for the failure of the negotiations on his shoulders and climbed to the top of the palace, and remembered when Lin accompanied him there as a child. Clays felt unworthy of the king for thinking of his daughter's safety under the circumstances, and decided to play the adventurer again and face the dragon himself, vowing to gouge out one of its eyes. Meanwhile, Lin prepared to cast her spell on Noor and warned him that the shock of the wind would be more severe than before. Ines supported her with her shield, and Lin put everything she had into the blast to propel it as fast as she could towards the capital. On the other side, the dragon got close enough to Clays and prepared to unleash its attack on him, at which point Rain realized he was going to use the dragon breath attack that burned the entire continent hundreds of years ago. Clays realizes that he won't be able to take his revenge and decides to act like a king one last time. He pulls out his dagger known as the Explosive Sword to inflict as much damage as possible on the dragon when he dies. When everyone sees the light of the sword, they realize that he intends to sacrifice his life for his people. But before any of them could attack each other, Noor appeared among them and succeeded in blocking the dragon's thunderous attack, and diverted it to the sky amidst the amazement of everyone, and the dragon found himself surrounded by a storm of dust, and the controller did not realize that a small, human-like Noor could block his attack and tried to push him away with his tail, but did not succeed in harming him. After that, the others arrived in the capital with the intention of finding Clays and escaping quickly while Noor fought with the dragon, but they were soon surprised when some debris fell towards them and caused them to trip over the horses, and then they found several ogres on their way. So Ines used her shield in case of an attack. Lin felt that she was in trouble because there were so many of them, although they were smaller than the ones she fought in the forest with Noor. But she held herself together and decided to think the same mindset as Noor and used her magical abilities to attack them, but they rushed towards them, and then Rollo decided to use his ability and succeeded in controlling the ghouls and ordering them to stop moving, and Lin and Ines were able to crush them easily. On the other side, the dragon was furious at the idea that a human could effortlessly withstand his blows, while Noor wondered that the hardness of his sword was exaggerated and suspected that it contained a secret. Then the dragon decided to use his trump card and carry out his last attack and flew far into the sky and prepared to release a loud explosion from his mouth towards him. But the shock was that he was able to block his beam and direct it to the sky in front of everyone's eyes. Then, Rollo felt desperate because Noor had made the dragon very angry and provoked him by not taking him seriously and confronting his power effortlessly. Then the dragon rushed towards him in anger, but Noor managed to stop him and broke one of his fangs. Then the dragon calmed down and surrendered to the reality that there is a human being capable of stopping him and standing in front of him. And everyone was surprised that he submitted directly in front of him, and when Noor noticed the shattered dragon fang, he remembered the story that his father used to tell him about the hero who was able to overcome the Dragon Lord and extract materials to make weapons and medicines from his body and contributed to the prosperity of his country and became a hero and savior. Then Noor smiled humbly and sat in front of the dragon and told him that he lacked all the characteristics of a true hero, then found his comrades approaching him after they realized that the dragon had no intention of continuing the fight, and Noor succeeded in saving the Clay Kingdom and its people from extermination. After they went to Noor to check on him, he thanked Rollo, thinking that he was the one who controlled the dragon and forced him to stop fighting at the right time, but he denied it. So Noor remembered that he believed that there are those who are afraid of his ability to control monsters, and that is the reason for his denial. He asked him to tell the dragon to go back to where he came from without harming humans again. When Lin and Inez were surprised by his desire, he told them that he knew the dragon was dangerous and that they should get rid of it here, but for some reason he wanted it to stay alive. Rollo hesitated about using his powers in front of them. Noor whispered to him that they would not fear or hate him and to be brave. He approached the dragon, and before he telepathized with it, the dragon told him that he would only obey his master's orders, much to Noor's confusion. Then Rollo succeeded in convincing him of Noor's requests, and the dragon flew away in peace, but soon he fell dead after a surprise attack by Derida's army, who ordered his followers to attack what was left intact in the capital, and he kept thinking that with this war, people will realize that his empire is invincible and no one will dare to stand against him. Noor and the others then went to the place where the dragon had fallen, and when he wanted to approach it to see if it was dead or alive, they were surprised to see a huge number of Magic Empire soldiers on the other side, and Derrida took a look at them through his glasses and ordered an immediate attack. Derrida thought that he would be able to finish them off and vaporize them easily, but he was shocked to see Noor blocking the attack of his deadly weapon in front of his eyes. Then Lin felt that they were in trouble, as the kingdom's army is not enough to deal with all these soldiers, and decided to retreat for the time being. But soon they were attacked again before they could move, and this time Inez blocked it with her shield, so Noor decided to play the role of bait to buy time and help the others escape, and decided to use hit and run tactics. He was surprised by Lin's willingness to help him and prepared to use the Wind Blast ability to fight them at close range. And when he was flying in the air, he was surprised by another attack from the army, but he was able to block it. Then he used his physical enhancement ability and rushed towards the army and decided to continue his plan and continued to block all their blows in front of Derrida, who saw the weapons and armor of his soldiers flying in the sky until Noor reached him and was directly in front of him. Then the swords began to rain down on the soldiers like rain, piercing their bodies and knocking them all out, and without Derrida realizing what was happening around him, he found himself standing alone in front of Noor, who attacks everyone he sees in front of him in the blink of an eye. Then he found Noor staring at him with evil looks and approached him and grabbed him violently, and he realized that he was doomed to die here and now, but he tried desperately to defend himself with a sword. But Noor used his abilities and made his train cars fly into the sky and fall directly on top of him. Derrida couldn't comprehend the sudden collapse of his army, despite their strength and readiness to fight, and when he took a closer look at his sword, he remembered that it was Clay's sword and didn't realize that he could hold it in one hand so easily. Then he realized that he did not get rid of him yet because he wanted to humiliate and torture him before taking his soul. And Noor was surprised to see him urinate on himself out of fear. Then he rushed to his horse and ran away. To Noor, Derrida was just an old man in a bright and eye-catching costume. His plan was to not let his soldiers pick up their weapons and attack him all at once so that he could overpower them. When he was surprised to see Derrida running away, he found himself unable to stand and thought he had reached his limit. Then the soldiers began to surround him from all sides while he was bleeding, and he realized that the low healing ability would be useless against his extreme fatigue, and when he felt that he was about to lose consciousness, he hoped that the others had succeeded in escaping. Then he was surprised by a group of meteors raining down on the soldiers like rain, and remembered that this ability is specific to Master Mian, and found Gilbert using the Dragon Drive technique to save him from the soldiers surrounding him, and soon the 6 masters gathered with him and took over the situation, and Noor was surprised that they are the teachers who attended their training schools when he was young, but no one remembers him. On the other side, Oaken summoned a group of his followers and used his magical abilities to bind the enemies in place and immobilize them so that Dandog and his soldiers could advance and attack them with all their might. After some time, the 6 masters won their battle against the Magic Empire and rescued Noor. When Lin used her powers to heal his injuries, she told him that the Empire's forces had been completely defeated after Sane interrogated one of their leaders. When Oaken learned that Derrida had fled as soon as his soldiers were defeated, he mocked him for asking his people to call him a wise ruler. When Noor realized he was talking about Derrida, he told him about his overpriced gold-plated gear. Oaken said it was high-quality gear that supported multiple skill sets and was made of orichalcum. Sig told him they wouldn't be able to catch him if he reached the border. Oaken thought they'd need a way to fly. Noor thought that was possible if they could heal the dragon, so Sane uses his powers to heal the dragon, and Noor is surprised to find that he remembers him, while Oaken is surprised that he has grown into a young man. He expresses concern at the thought of them all riding the dragon at once, but tells them that Rollo will be with them and take control of the dragon. Then they found the dragon gradually regaining consciousness after receiving treatment, and when he recovered, Noor realized from his behavior that he was angry and wanted revenge. So Rollo told him that he wanted him to order him to avenge himself, and then Noor was surprised that the dragon considered him his master, and when they all wanted him to accompany them, he remembered that he suffers from acrophobia, but he would have to ride with them because he was the one who came up with the idea. Then he was surprised that the spy master Caro would accompany them to help them hide in case they needed it. Then they were joined by Clays and Rain, who decided to go with them to negotiate, and Inez thought that Rain would punish her for disobeying his orders, but he was glad that she preferred to return rather than run away to Mithra. Dandal wondered if Sig regretted not saying anything to Noor, and told him that he didn't need them in his life in the first place and that the idea of adopting and raising him was nothing but arrogance. And Dandal agreed with him as he considered himself a joke compared to his power. On their way, they continued to search for Derrida without a trace of him, which made Rain worried about the idea of returning to his empire so soon, but Lynn found him running at full speed on the bridge with his horse. When they found that he was approaching the gates of the Empire, they thought that they would be doomed if they decided to break into his territory, and at the same time, they could not let him escape. So Inez thought of destroying the Empire's entire defense zone so that they could escape later if they had to, and she managed to crush their defenses easily. Meanwhile, Lynn gathers her courage after realizing that everyone around her is exceptionally strong, and with Noor by her side, she feels that they have a better chance of defeating the Magic Empire. On the other side, Derrida approached the gates of the Empire feeling as if he had been reborn, and after he was inside his homeland, he became very angry for having been subjected to so many insults and arrived at his throne in a shabby state, and when his followers asked him about the soldiers, he expressed his indignation that he took the trouble to provide losers like them with the finest weapons and armor. Then he was shocked when he saw the Dragon of Disaster approaching the headquarters of his palace after he thought he had caused his death, but he realized why he was still alive when he saw Sane with them and guessed that someone was controlling the dragon, so he ordered one of his followers to bring the tamer of the monsters, but he told him that the tamer left for another city for an emergency matter. Derrida was furious and continued to scold his followers until he got the idea to use his deadly weapon, the Karanos. Despite his followers' warnings about the dangers of using the weapon in the city and that it was still being tested, he insisted on using it to kill the dragon and told them that they only needed to hit it with one blow. When the Kuranos were ready and began to attack the dragon, they were surprised by Noor's repulsion of the weapon's beam, and Derrida ended up watching his empire collapse after the beam changed course and exploded in the sky, raining a shower of projectiles all over the empire, and he soon found his followers abandoning him one by one and holding him fully responsible. Meanwhile, Carol lost track of Derrida after he entered the building. When they saw his lethal weapon attack, Noor was able to fight back, but ended up jumping off the dragon's back and crashing into the building. On the other side, Derrida found himself surrounded by a group of soldiers who wanted to get rid of him to ensure the survival of the empire. Before they could take his soul, they were surprised when Noor entered the building. They thought he wanted to protect Derrida and attacked him, but he blocked them and made Derrida fall to the ground. Ernadeus told him that he had to atone with his life for the damage he had done to the country. Then Noor suggested they settle their differences quietly. A soldier threw a bomb at them and Noor had to kick Derrida away to avoid the explosion. He wondered why they insisted on getting rid of an old man, even though he was their emperor. But they didn't listen to him and kept trying to attack Derrida. He told them that he was just an old man on the verge of death and wasn't worth the trouble. Arnadius said that they should get rid of him before the enemies invade their country. Noor realized that they thought they had come for the purpose of conquering the empire. Then the rest joined him, and Sane told them that there was no need for them to sacrifice their emperor's head to survive, so Noor decided to let his comrades take over and resort to peaceful negotiations. Rain began to negotiate with Derrida, and when he found him trembling in fear and begging for his life, he told him that the number of victims of his country is about 127 people and that he is ready to pardon him in exchange for the same amount of suffering as the victims, and he soon found Corral, preparing to torture him while saying will heal him every time he suffers enough suffering. Afterward, Lin treats Nor's injuries. Seeing the devastation in the Empire, he feels bad that he caused all this, but Lin supports him and tells him that he protected them and it's Derrida's fault. He wondered if there were any victims of that attack, and she told him that the attack hit the magical energy furnaces, which contain a huge amount of energy that makes it impossible for people to enter them, and the people of the Empire will not suffer the same damage as the people of her country. After the negotiations ended, Rain joined them and told them that from now on, the two countries will seek to coordinate for reconstruction after the war is officially over, and Derrida decided to give up his position and his grandchildren will take over after him, although they are only 10 years old, so the members of the Court of 10 Men will have to be their guardians. Then they were joined by the Court of 10, led by Rendius, to apologize to Nor for attacking him due to a misunderstanding and that they were ready to compensate him. Nor did not care much about it, and told them that what angered him was that they had gathered on an old man and insisted on causing his death. Rendius told him that if he hadn't stopped them, their country would have fallen into a terrible civil war. He thanked him for saving the situation and vowed that they would be ready to help him at any time. Then they heard the dragon make a sound, and Rollo told them that he was bored and wanted to leave. Before they left, Rendius introduced himself to Nor and looked forward to their next meeting someday. After the dragon began to fly away, Nor asked Rollo to tell the dragon to fly close to the ground, and Lin thought he was thinking about the damage to the Empire while suffering from acrophobia throughout the trip. After returning to the kingdom, the Clays thanked Nor for saving them from a war of annihilation, and Rain suggested that they give him a reward for his efforts on the battlefield, but he refused to receive anything in return for his help. But Clays insisted on giving him a decent reward, so he thought to ask them to help Rollo, as he is now considered homeless and without a homeland to return to. Clays hesitated to help a child of the demon race, as the city of Mithra would consider them enemies if they accepted a member of the demon race to live among them, while Nor thought to provide him with a decent life in the capital as a citizen and ensure that he lives under the auspices of a wealthy family. Then he told Clays that Rollo had contributed to stopping the war in a big way, as he succeeded in controlling the dragons and going to negotiations with the magical empire, and Rollo remained unaware of what Nor was trying to do by helping him and giving him a better life, and he remembered that, hours ago, he wished to die and be reborn in a life without humiliation or beatings. In the evening, Rollo woke up in his new room without being severely beaten and went to dinner with Inez, who decided to take care of him and let him live with her in her house, and Rollo was amazed that he could eat whatever he wanted without fear and began to shed tears of happiness. The next day, Nor realized how bad the situation in the kingdom was due to the damage, and there were many who lost their homes and possessions, and he was relieved to find that the guild was unharmed and still standing, and when he stared at its sign, he remembered his failure in the past to acquire a skill that would qualify him to become an adventurer, and he did not imagine that fate would bring him and his teacher together again after 15 years. Nor remembered when he went to train with Sig to learn to use the sword, and Sig thought that he would not be able to withstand the hardship of training for more than 3 days, but he was surprised that he lasted longer and went through the most severe types of training without complaining, and he realized that Nor had a bright future ahead of him. After the end of the training, Nor approached him and asked him to show him what kind of skills he could acquire, and when he saw Sig's super fast skill, he was amazed at how strong he was. But Sig was shocked that Nor could see the details of his attacks in detail, despite his super speed, and realized that he might surpass his strength at this rate. After 2 months of training, he was surprised that Nor did not make any progress other than acquiring the skill of blocking, and after 3 months he decided to tell him to stop training as it was a waste of time in his case, and he felt sorry that a boy with his diligence and abilities would not be suitable to become a swordsman, but he advised him to find his talent elsewhere. After he went to Dandold school, he was surprised that Sig nominated him to train as a warrior in his school, as he is physically small compared to the rest, but Nor told him with his burning enthusiasm that he wants to become an adventurer at any cost. 2 months later, Dandog was impressed by Noor's unexpected abilities, and after a large part of the hill collapsed, he went to save his students from the falling rock, and he was surprised by Noor's courage and toughness, and he remained standing ready to stop the debris, and he thought of taking care of him until he became an invincible armor. But after 3 months, Dandog was disappointed after he failed to gain any skill and had to tell him to stop training, so he had to look for another school. When he joined Mian's training, she gave him small stones and asked him to hit the target hanging in a distant tree, hoping to find a suitable excuse to reject him, but she was shocked that he managed to hit the target accurately, so she asked him to try again, and when he hit the target again, she found that she had no choice but to accept him, and made him practice only rock throwing, unlike the rest of his classmates, because she thought he would cause her trouble if he used a bow and arrow because of his strong aim. When he asked her to practice with a bow, she gave him his own bow and asked him to take the shooting position. But as soon as he grabbed the edge of the bow, he was surprised that it shattered in his hands, and he tried repeatedly to hold the bow in the right way, but to no avail, until she ran out of practice bows and also broke her own bow. So she told him that his only training was rock throwing. After 2 months, Mian was surprised at how strong he was, and when she asked him where he learned it, he told her that he used to hunt birds in this way, and she began to wonder if there was any point in having him as a student. And after 3 months, she decided to expel him on the grounds that he lacked the necessary sensitivity to handle any kind of delicate weapon despite his great skill in aiming without the need for a bow. After that, Noor went to Caro's spy training school. And at his first training, Caro felt that his stealth skills were not bad, but he could sense him and hit him when he approached him. In the trap avoidance training, he was surprised by his quick wit, although it had nothing to do with the purpose of the training, and he was able to avoid the traps despite his impulsiveness. After 3 months, he had to tell him that he had no future in the spy class because he lacked the necessary skills and thought that he possessed many qualities despite his lack of skills, and decided to invite him to join the Capital Intelligence Agency if he decided to give up the idea of becoming an adventurer. Noor then went to Oken's school to learn magic, and despite his young age, Oken agreed to accept him. After 2 months, Noor was unable to use any magic spells, so Oken realized that he did not have magical energy inside his body in the first place and suggested him to enter the energy echo chamber in the hope that he would gain some energy that would allow him to use magic, and warned him to get out if he felt its currents increasing. Days later, he was shocked to learn that Noor still hadn't come out of the room and was sure that he might have died in there, but when he entered, he found that he was fine and was surprised to be taken out of the room and asked him not to interrupt him because he felt that he was close to making good progress. After 3 months, Noor didn't learn any spells other than using a tiny flame of fire on his finger, which made Oken feel hopeless and impossible to become a magician, but he soon went crazy when he saw that he could use 2 flames at once, while it took him 50 years to master this skill, while Oken wished his body was more attuned to magic because he had the talent, but he ended up failing miserably at all kinds of training and would never be able to become an adventurer. But he ended up going to Sane's school to learn healing spells. But Sane refused to accept him because he had not undergone healing rituals as a child. Noor insisted on enrolling in the school and vowed not to leave until he got his approval. Days later, Sane was surprised by Noor's insistence on enrolling in his school and taking it seriously, as he chose to endure the bitter cold and sleep outside at night to prove his determination to him. One day, Noor's strength gave out and he fell down. Sane decided to allow him to participate in only the basics of the training, treating him and telling him that he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to acquire a new skill. After 3 months, he was able to master a meager healing skill, which made him feel frustrated that he would not be recognized as an adventurer due to his useless abilities, even though he could use healing magic without being naturally blessed. After some time, the 6 masters gathered after learning of Noor's disappearance from the capital, and Sane regretted his decision to let him go, while Mian told them that he was strong enough to live on his own and that they should leave him alone. But he thought that if they invested their time in developing his skills, he would become an unparalleled adventurer. And when they all supported Sane's idea, they agreed to start the journey to search for him and adopt him. But they did not find him until the day of the Battle of the Magic Empire. Back in the present, Noor enters the guild to check on the situation and gives the guildmaster the sign he found outside. The guildmaster notices that Noor has had a rough day and tells him that the head of the Builders Guild has been looking for him all day and needs him to shovel debris and help build temporary homes. Noor decided to go and help him and spent the rest of the day shoveling debris and putting it on carts. He noticed his colleagues praising the importance of his presence and that they were able to accomplish a lot in a short period of time thanks to him, and he felt grateful to them. Then he looked at the moon and remembered what happened throughout the entire day, and what dominated his thoughts was his ability to fly due to Lin's spell several times. Meanwhile, Clays discovered that Mithras City was secretly working with the Magic Empire to declare war on them and annihilate them, from the kidnapping of his daughter in the cave to the giant ogre, and finally the invasion of the royal capital, but he felt proud that his country has people who can be counted on in times of crisis. On the other hand, Noor continued to help the masons until sunrise the next day, when he saw Lin around giving food to some of the workers, and when she went to thank him for his help, she noticed that he was starving from the sounds of his stomach, so she gave him some food and asked him not to exert himself before she went to continue her work. Noor realized that he wouldn't be where he is now without everyone's help, and that he had finally reached the point where he felt good about himself and decided to become an adventurer like the heroes he heard stories about as a child from his father, and use the power of his sword as much as possible. Then a worker called him to help clean up, and suddenly the bell tower collapsed on top of him. Noor rushed as fast as he could to save the worker and managed to get the tower away from him, and then went on with his work of clearing away the debris.